Welcome to the Ancestral Quest tutorial, in which we will give you an overview of the important new features of version 16. You're looking right now at a menu of the more important new features. We will quickly review all of these except for the one near the bottom that is for the advanced handling of family search sources. We'll discuss that in a separate tutorial. This will just be mentioned briefly in this tutorial. Let's begin by telling you about the new Descendants tab. Before I do, Ancestral Quest has always had this pedigree view that allows you to see the ancestors of a person and navigate up and down ancestral lines using that. With version 16, we now have the ability to see the descendants of any of your ancestors. Let me select an ancestor from way back in my line and go to the Descendants tab. Up at the top here, you can select how many generations of descendants you would like to see initially when you get in this screen. You can either go to just the children, children and grandchildren, or children through great-grandchildren. You can continue to expand beyond that, however. Notice that wherever there is an arrow that is pointing to the right, that means there's more posterity, but it's not been expanded into your view. So if I click on this arrow, that will expand one more generation for the person that you clicked it by. I could continue going down and selecting more generations. You're only allowed to see up to 6 generations at a time. If you try to go to a 7th generation, as I can do by finding one of these children who has extended lines, if I were to click on this button to extend this line, it would first shift everything over one generation to the left and then display this, the posterity of this person, as the new 6th generation. And so you can keep moving to the right, but realize that as you do, it will start to move off people that are furthest to the left. You can also make anybody in the line the new primary person by simply clicking on this button here with the up arrow and a bar. That will move that person to the new primary. Or you can shift a generation over by clicking on this button to the right. I'll let you experiment with that on your own. Back at the top of the screen, next to the name of your primary person, if that person has parents, you can click on that button to see the parents, select either the father or the mother, and the father or mother becomes the new primary person with your previous primary person now as a child in that family. So you can walk up the generations using this button, or you can walk down the generations by using various methods I've just shown you. At any time, you can change how many generations you would like to be viewing. If you do certain tasks like import a GEDCOM file or do other things to add or import people on other screens, and if it looks like this screen has not reflected the changes you just made, you can click on this refresh button to refresh this screen based on the information you just imported. This screen also has some options. For now, we only have one. We anticipate adding other options in the future, so you can click on this button, select your options, and then apply them. That's about all there is to the descendant view. It's really a cool view to play around with and look at the descendants of any particular ancestor you have. Now let me explain about the sharing of events. First, let me give you a background of why it was added. As you'll recall, in version 15 we introduced Tree Tips, Ancestral Quest's built-in capability to help you research your family. Tree Tips has opened the door to quickly finding new information on your ancestry, such as birth records, death records, marriage records, census records, and so on. Now, Ancestral Quest needed a way to more quickly and efficiently enter and document the information you were finding. Let's take you through a quick example, starting with a very brief recap of Tree Tips, then of using the new Share Events feature to enter and document your findings. For this exercise, I want to find a census record. So let me look for a census record of an ancestor. In this case, I'll look for details on Catherine Ann Partington. I could open the View menu and activate the Family Search Hints and find my past hints, and I will likely find a census record I'm looking for out of one of these services. Or I could open the Internet menu, go down to Search for Favorite Sites, and select My Heritage, and do an advanced search on My Heritage, who likely would point me to the census record I'm looking for. However, in this case, I want to use Ancestry.com. Let's do an advanced search as an example. There are different ways to do the Ancestry.com searching, which depending on your style of searching may be more efficient. I'll just use one of the more common, straightforward ways of doing it. So I'm going to go to the Internet menu, drop down to Search Ancestry.com, and do a general search. As part of the advanced search technique of Ancestral Quest, it will first gather a lot of information about the person you're researching along with their parents and spouse. And you'll see here on the left bar that Ancestral Quest has passed to Ancestry the name, birth, marriage, death information, as well as the names of the parents and the spouse. Through this, Ancestry.com can do a really good job of locating the specific person you're after. Now, what I'm really after with Ancestry.com is not this initial list, but if I can find an item in the list that I can tell for sure is my person, in this case, this looks for sure like it's my Catherine Ann Partington. If I'll click on this item, and it shows that to me, it will also show over here on the right a list of suggested records. Now these, in my experience, tend to be the same as if you were using Ancestry.com hinting. These are like the cream of the crop records that you would be looking for. In this case, I'm looking for a United States Census. The particular one I want, let me scroll down and see if I can find it here. There it is. I want the 1950 United States Census. So let's view this record and zoom in. So this looks like the family I'm after. This is Catherine Ann Partington as a 17-year-old young woman in the family of her parents, Ralph and Ann. The first thing I would do when I find a family like this in a census is I'll go back to Ancestral Quest and make sure that all of these family members are now entered into my database with the approximate ages that you can gain from the census. And now I'm ready to document the specifics about this event for each member of the family. I'll use the new Share Event feature of Ancestral Quest to speed up this process. So first, let me select one member of the family in my database, and I'll select Catherine Ann Partington, and then I will edit her record, and I will add a new custom event. For this type of event, I like to use the residence event because it helps me identify the exact time and place that the person was when the census was taken. In order to fill in the correct date and place, let me go back to the census record and scroll up to the top, where it states that this census page was taken on the first day of August, 1850, in the city of St. Louis, in the county of St. Louis, in the state of Missouri. So let's go enter that into Ancestral Quest. That was 1 August, 1850, in St. Louis, Missouri. And I could now share this much detail with all of the other members of this family. But first I want to add the source from which this information was gathered. So let me go into Source. This is the 1850 census, which I don't seem to have here, so I will add a new source. Let's create a census type. Now I could fill in various items like the title of the census, the author, publication facts, etc. In this case, I'm going to use the Freeform because it's quicker for the example I'm giving. In a Freeform source, you have to give a title that will be what you would look this source up in the list of sources. So I'm going to call this the U.S. 1950 Census, Partington, Ralph, head of house. And I'm just going to copy and paste from Ancestry. So I'm going to go back to the Ancestry.com record. And on the prior page, Ancestry.com lists at the bottom how they would recommend you cite this source. So the source information down here, I'm going to say is from the original data, the 7th census. I'm going to copy that. And back in Ancestral Quest, I'm going to paste that. And that's good enough for the source. Let's select that source. And now in the citation detail, let me go back to Ancestry and select this information. Paste that into the Ancestral Quest detail. I also like to add the name of the family, so I'm going to say Ralph Partington, head of house in St. Louis. Alright, so I've now created the source. We'll hit save. This is now exactly what I want to enter for each of the other members of the family. I want to record that on this date, in this place, We gathered information from this source that they lived there on that date. Prior to Ancestral Quest version 16, I would now need to create this exact same detail for each individual member of the family and attach each of those residence events to this particular source. That took a bit of time and effort. With version 16, I can now say, let's share this event and source. At the top of the screen, you see exactly the details that you will be sharing. Down below, you could select individuals from Ancestral Quest's powerful filter focus screen, where you can select any group you want. But most of the time that you'll be sharing this type of information, it will be with direct family, whether a couple or a family. In this case, I want to share the information with the family where Catherine was a child with her parents. This is the family that was listed on the census. However, a couple of these children died before the census was taken, so Joseph wasn't on the census and Henry was not on the census. Now, if you start adding different families or different groups and you make a mess of this list, you can come down here to clear the selections. That'll clear everybody off the screen and let you kind of start over with adding. At this point, I have selected those people that are on the census. I will hit OK. And now I can hit OK to share this. That just made a copy of this information to each member of the family. Now that was a lot easier than adding and documenting this event to each individual member of the family. It's taken me a few minutes to demonstrate and explain the background and technique of sharing events, but when you start using it, you'll find that it goes pretty quickly. Let me save this. You can use the same general technique in sharing scrapbook items. If you'll go to the scrapbook screen, if you decide you want to share a scrapbook item with other people, typically members of the family, again, you can go to Share, select the people you want to share it with, and when you hit OK, that item shown at the top of the screen will be shared with your selected family members. Now let's introduce you to the new Freeform Sources. Ancestral Quest has always had the ability to let you record sources of the information you enter into your family database. In the earliest versions, you would enter source information in notes for the person, and the entry was essentially freeform. Later in version 3, Ancestral Quest introduced structured sources, where you could enter the title, author, publisher, repository, and other information about each source in separate fields. The great benefit of these structured sources was that you could easily share a single source with multiple events throughout your family database. As online data systems such as Ancestry.com and FamilySearch began providing source references in a freeform layout, the new Freeform Sources of Ancestral Quest 16 will let you simply copy and paste the source references from online systems directly into your personal family tree, as demonstrated in the example I just showed when sharing an event. Another purpose for the Freeform Sources is that some genealogists require that the source footnotes appear on reports in a very particular manner. Even though Ancestral Quest follows industry norms for formatting footnotes from the components of author, title, publisher information, repositories, and so on, these genealogists require the footnotes to appear without any variation to their specs. A freeform source allows these genealogists to enter the source information exactly as they require it to be shown in reports. With that background, let me quickly educate you on how to best use Ancestral Quest's new freeform source capability. So let me begin adding a source. Individual source will add a death source for the death record. And if I say add, notice the difference. This is the standard structured source layout with the various fields. If I go and check freeform, we now have basically a full reference field and a short reference field and a title. The full reference field is where you type in the source exactly as it should appear the first time it will appear on a given report. If you want it to appear in a shortened format, if it appears subsequently later in the same report, then you could enter the shortened version here in the short reference field. If you don't want to ever have the source appear in a shortened abbreviated format, simply don't enter information in the short reference field. The title of a freeform source is never going to be printed actually on the report. Instead, this is how you will find this source in your list of sources. So make sure you enter a title that is unique to this source. One more thing, to help you format the source exactly as you want it to appear, Ancestral Quest allows you to mark some of the text as bold, other text as italics, and yet other text as underlined. Simply use the letters B, I, and U with angle brackets to enclose the text that you want special formatting for. I've created a sample source to demonstrate this. Let me show this. If we go to the sample and edit, In this case, I've showed that the bolded text with the B in angle brackets and /B, the italicized in I and /I, and the underlined with a U and end U. The way this will actually print in a report can be shown here. This item number 2 is how it will show in a report. Let me make you aware of one more option that Ancestral Quest provides you with Freeform Sources. Many sources can be broken into 2 components. First, text that will always be used to identify the source, and second, specifics for each person or family listed in the source. Ancestral Quest will let you enter a freeform source so that part of the source reference that never changes can be entered here in the full reference field of the source record, and then the changeable citation detail can be properly connected for each person or family. Let me demonstrate this with 2 examples, both of which are also mentioned in the help topic for the source screen. So let me open up help here and go down to the examples that we've provided. I'm going to begin a new source. So in this case, I want to add a source to the death event. I'm going to create a new source, and from my help file, here's example 1. It's the Idaho death records. I'll copy that as if I'd copied that from a website. I will set my source to be a freeform type of source, and then in the full reference field I will paste the entire source. Now I want to give this a proper title. I'm going to just take the first part of the source here to be my title to show up in my source list. I'll copy that and paste it here. I don't need to have a short version. The permanent part of this source is the Idaho death records down to Boise, Idaho. The part that changes with each record within the source starts here with the name of the person. I'm going to copy this out. I'm going to Control X to delete that, and then we'll say OK to this source. We'll now select that source that we were adding to our death event, and I will paste that information here in the reference of the citation. Notice in the sample footnote above that this displays the source as it was before I manipulated it. But the way we have this set now, I can reuse this portion of the source over and over again for different citations, and for each time that I cite it for a new person, I can add this citation detail. By default, any details you add to the citation screen will simply be appended to the end of what was entered in the source reference field. By the way, if you entered a short version of the reference field in the source screen, you would be able to also enter a corresponding short version of the citation detail on this screen. So let's save this, and I have a new source in my list. Let me now show you another example. This time we want the changeable citation details to be placed in the middle of a source reference. So let me again say add, this time to the record of the person, and I'm going to create a new source. I'm going to again from the help topic of this screen select the second example. I'm going to copy that out of help and paste it into a freeform full reference. I will copy this portion of the reference into our title, and then I can manipulate this a bit. The portion of this source that is reusable are things both at the beginning, starting with United States Census, and ending down here with the National Archives. Some things in between are the data that are variable. So let me take this here through the family number. That is our variable portion. I'm going to Control X to get that out of there, and I'll use %C to say this is where I want to place the citation details within this source. We'll now say OK. We'll select this source, and then I will paste the details that I copied. Notice again in the sample footnote, it replaces the %C with the details that I added here in the full reference field of the citation. But I can reuse this United States Census 1900 over and over as I add different detail. Now this detail is designed to be just for one specific person. I would rather have this be designed to be a family, so I'm going to remove the name of the person, and I'm going to say this is the Alma Findlay house, head of house. And you can see how that's reflected in the final source, but this source can now be reused for every member of this family as we document them. You can decide how much of the freeform source should be reusable text to be placed in the source reference field, and how much of the freeform source is specific to a person or family to be put here in citation. Some users will simply place all information about the source into the source record which is perhaps easier, but also means there is one source in your source list for every citation you make, and you won't be able to effectively attach any such source to more than one person. If you take this approach, this means you'll have a very long list of sources in your file. Now let's talk about background images on charts and reports. You can really dress up some of your charts by putting a background image, whether it's your favorite scene of your favorite camping spot, or whether it's a family portrait, or whatever it is. You can put pictures behind several of the charts. Let's go here to the Charts and Reports screen, and whether it's a pedigree chart or a fan chart, you now have this option of including a background image. Similarly with Ancestry charts, you can add background images, descendant charts, line of descent charts, and a couple more, including the calendar. And I'll show a couple of these to you over the next few minutes. For right now, let me go to the descendant type of chart, and let's select the drop line. Let me show you without a background image what a typical chart might look like on standard paper. So if I preview this, it shows part of a descendant line on a plain white paper and finishes up on the next page. You could simply print this and tape the two pages together. We do have a way of printing this all on one page that I'll demonstrate briefly in a minute. To make that chart a little more interesting, let's include a background image and come in here to set the options. Let me select a picture I'd like to use for this particular chart. Browse and select this winter cabin picture. Now, having selected a picture, this screen gives you information: how big the picture is in number of pixels, your page settings, what the DPI is going to be if it prints at the current selected sizes, and so on. Right now we have it selected to print an image for the entire chart, so the chart is going to span 2 pages, and it's going to let this image span over both. You could say I want to repeat the image for each page, in which case you'll get the picture shown once on one page and again the same picture on the other page. Depending on the type of picture you have and the type of chart, you may occasionally want to use that. Let's, for right now, assume we're going to print just one picture on the entire chart. Now you have other options. You can say I want the picture to fit within the same margins that my chart is going to fit in. I've already set my settings for 0.13 inches all around, and if I say I want the image to fit within that, we would select this option. I could tell the chart to print this picture all the way out as far as the printer is capable by saying print out to the printable area. If you had wider margins, that would be more noticeable. Whether to keep the aspect ratio, which means the original picture has a certain width and height ratio to make things look normal. If you keep this checked, then you will keep the same ratio here. You can uncheck that, and that means the picture will stretch as it needs to fill in to the margins you've asked for. Let me take a second here and crop this picture. So I'm going to go to Adjust Image, and instead of the entire picture, let's say I just wanted to go from there down to about there. So I've trimmed off some of the picture. Ancestral Quest will now show you what your adjusted to pixels are versus the original. And again, let's turn the aspect back on here. We've just about got the same filling without having to stretch it at all, but let's just stretch it to fill out to the margins. You can also set custom margins. If you wanted to, you could say, instead of filling out all the way to the edges, I just want this in one corner. So let's go left and top the same, but maybe right, let's go 5 inches in from the right, and let's come up maybe 3 inches from the bottom. And so you can adjust exactly where you want to place the picture. Most of the time you'll probably want to go right out to the page or printable area, but you can adjust that if you want. Lastly, if you print the picture at its full intensity, the background image can become overbearing compared with what you're trying to present in your chart. So sometimes you may want to fade this so that your picture is a nice background image but doesn't really take the full focus of your chart. Once you've played around and made the proper adjustments to say, hey, this looks pretty good, then try it out actually to preview it. So let's preview this and see what happens. This is now printing half of my picture with that amount of the chart over top of it, and the other half of the picture with the other part of the chart over it. Now I can print this all to one single page, so let me show you how to do that real quick. If I hit close, and we'll go here to select a different printer that's capable of doing this. I'm going to select the PDF driver, and then under properties I'm going to set a custom paper size. And based on how much overflow I just observed, let's say we want to go about 14 inches wide by maybe about 8 inches tall. If I for now turn off the background image, let's just preview that and see what it does. Okay, that fits pretty nicely on a page. I can make it even shorter here if I want, but the entire chart fits on this one page. Let's go take a look at our background images again to see if we've got it the way we want. And stretching it out, it looks pretty good here. A single image on the chart. I think I like everything the way it is. And let's preview this page with my entire background image with the chart on top. Anyway, you can see it really dresses up this chart to be able to add a background image. Let me just show you one more thing that I think you'll find of interest. If you were to want to print a calendar of your family birthdays and anniversaries, you can actually print the calendar at the bottom of the page with your image at the top, the way you often buy calendars in the store. So let's go here to the calendar, and I'm just going to randomly pick a date. Let's preview a standard calendar page. Yes, we want a blank page for now. I haven't selected anybody to print their birthdays in here, but that's what a typical calendar page would look like until you select people to show their birthdays and anniversaries. So now let's print this same blank calendar page with an image on top. I'm going to go into include a background image. I'm going to tell it I want this calendar portion of the chart to be at the bottom of the page. So I'm going to add 5.5 inches, which is half a page, to this top margin. That puts my chart down in the bottom half of the page. I want to move my picture up to the top half of the page. So I'm going to use a custom placement, and I'll tell it that I want the top to be 0.3 inches, but the bottom now to be 5.8. And that's what we would print. So let me say OK. And let's preview this. And yes, I want a blank page for now. But you can print your own calendar pages with your own photos using this new capability of Ancestral Quest. I hope that gives you at least some ideas of some of the possibility. There's a lot of things you could do to dress up your own charts to be personalized the way you want to show them to your family. Now let me briefly introduce the new tool to add and remove country names in your place names. This tool was designed to help you maintain consistency in your place names. It works only for places in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Some users prefer to have all of their places be complete, including the country names. Other users feel it is best to have just the city, county, and state or province, but do not want the country in their place names. Let me open this tool. Start by selecting the country name that you want to add or remove. For each of the three major categories of Canada, United States, or United Kingdom, choose a format of the country name that you want to add or remove. In this example, I'll use Canada spelled out. Notice that when the country is selected, you can now expand a list of the places that will be affected if you proceed. If you're adding any place name that ends in AB or Alberta, BC, British Columbia, etc., will have the name Canada appended to it. If you're removing, places that end currently in AB Canada, Alberta Canada, etc. will have Canada removed from the end of these place names. Let me demonstrate this by clicking the Add button. Notice that Ancestral Quest will begin scanning your database looking for any potential match of the criteria you've asked for. In this case, we found a place of Cardston, Alberta, and because we asked to add Canada, it will be replaced with Cardston, Alberta, Canada. At this point, you could say yes or no to this specific instance, and Ancestral Quest will continue scanning for the next instance. Or at any time you can cancel the procedure, or if you say yes to all, the process will continue scanning your database, and every time it finds a match it will add the country code that you had requested. Let me close this for now. You can run this tool as often as you like. Typically, you would run it after you import data from an outside source, such as importing a GEDCOM file or importing data directly from Family Search, so that you can maintain consistency in the way place names are recorded in your database. Okay, let's take just a minute now to tell you about the enhancements we've made to the Tags feature. Tags are these visual indicators that you see in a few places on this pedigree screen. Each color represents some particular piece of information that you want to be reminded of visually as you work on your database. In the past, if you wanted to add a tag to somebody, say to Catherine Ann Partington, highlight her name, go to the Tools menu, drop down to Tags, and now you can select any of the 7 tags. In the prior version, rather than seeing a list here quite like this, you had a drop-down box that included showing you the names of the tags, but it did not include the colors. We decided to make this a static list box with the colors to help you more easily associate colors and names with the tag you're trying to grab. So let's say that we want to set this yellow actively researching tag for Catherine, and we'll set that. And she now has the yellow tag set. Here's another enhancement we've made to tags. Instead of having to go to the Tools menu and down to Tags to make an adjustment, all you've got to do now is click on any tag that you see, and it pops this screen up for this person. I could now add, for example, review the census status and set that. I could click again here and remove one of these if I wanted. Now what happens if a person does not have any tags? Again, you could click on the name of the person, go up to Tags under the Tools menu, but we also have a new enhancement. While you're in here, set this checkbox to say, I'd like to see a tag placeholder on all people in the database. So having set that, let's close the screen. Notice now there's an empty box where tags might be. No particular color, just an empty box. That means you can click on that box for somebody who otherwise doesn't have a tag, and then set a tag. And I can then click on the tag that's there and set another tag. Notice it's a lot quicker and easier to set and clear tags with these enhancements than it was in the prior version. Let me go ahead and clear this black tag. You can also do the same thing from the Descendants view that's new. So Hector already has the tag we just set, but all these other people do not have tags, just an empty placeholder. If I wanted to set a tag for Janet, click on the tag placeholder and select a tag, set it, and away we go. I hope you enjoyed the new enhancements to the tags feature. Now let me show you about the new enhancements to the way Ancestral Quest handles multiple databases open at a single time. In prior versions, Ancestral Quest was able to open multiple databases, but some users didn't realize that, because if you opened a second file, it opened up right over top of the first file and it appeared that the first file had been closed. So some users figured that out and others didn't. We've now made it so it's more obvious. Let me show you. If I open a second database here, let's open up file number 2. Notice that Ancestral Quest now opens the second file slightly cascaded to make it obvious you have 2 files open at this point. Let's open file number 3. And number 4. As you can see, as you open additional files, it's fairly obvious that there are several open. You can then select any one that you want. Ancestral Quest also has a new Windows menu that allows you to either cascade these as you see them here, or tile them to make it easy for you to work side by side with the various files. Anyway, that's a new option in Ancestral Quest to be able to visually see the multiple databases if you have need for such a capability. Let me now tell you about the enhancements we've made to the Map It function. First, let me explain what that is for those of you that don't know. If you go to the individual edit screen for any person and you put your cursor in one of the place fields, you'll notice on the right bar here there's a Map It button. That's been there for many versions. If you click on that, prior to version 16, your only choice was that would send information about this place to the MapQuest internet service, and MapQuest would attempt to show you that place on their map. With version 16, we've enhanced this so that MapIt doesn't always go to MapQuest. You can now select a mapping service of your choice. So if I click MapIt on this button here, we can either choose MapQuest if we want, or we could go to one of these others and have that take us to the map. Let me try Google Maps on this case. And here we have Skippool in England, apparently the place where this ancestor of mine was born. If you always want to use the same service over and over, you can check this box down here to make sure that it always uses this particular service, and it won't pop up the screen anymore. It will always just go to the service you've selected. If you've made that choice and later wished you had this list of choices again, you can set that. Let me show you. If I set this and say let's use that service, and then back here in Ancestral Quest, the next time you want to do MapIt, it goes straight to that service without asking. If you want that box back, you'll need to go into Preferences under the Tools menu, Tools, Preferences, Miscellaneous tab, and tell it you want to show the mapping selection options. Other places in the program where you can use the Map It functionality are within the individual summary view. Notice if you hover your mouse over any place, it will change to a map type of icon. If you click on the place, it will bring up the Map It function and let you see that place on a map. The same with the timeline view. As you hover your mouse over any of the places out here, you will be given the choice to see those on a map. Let me now help you understand the enhancements to Ancestral Quest's ability to repair broken scrapbook links. Let's say that you had linked the 11 items in this folder to the scrapbooks of various people in your family database. Then you decide to reorganize your scrapbook storage system, so you move the 4 highlighted pictures from this folder into a subfolder. At this point, you will have broken 4 links within Ancestral Quest, as AQ will still think that the pictures are in this folder. Ancestral Quest has 2 primary ways of letting you correct broken links. First, as you go about your day-to-day usage of Ancestral Quest, when AQ needs to display one of the moved pictures, it will find that the location of the picture is no longer valid. In this case, it will pop up a message letting you know that the link is not valid, and AQ will invite you to tell it to which folder the photo has been moved. So you can simply fix the links one at a time as Ancestral Quest encounters the broken links. In order to help you further, when you fix one link, Ancestral Quest will then ask if you want to fix all links of images that were in the same folder. In the case where you have actually moved all of the photos, this can be really helpful, as Ancestral Quest will then scan your database and adjust links for all the photos that had been in this folder. There was a problem, however. Often users didn't fully understand what Ancestral Quest was asking, or they weren't sure whether they had moved all of the pictures or just some of the pictures. In this example, when Ancestral Quest would adjust links for all pictures in this folder, it would fix the 4 that had been moved, but it would end up breaking the links to the 7 remaining pictures. Now in version 16, when you tell Ancestral Quest to adjust the links to all photos that were in this folder, Ancestral Quest will alert you one picture at a time whether the photo was moved and the link needs to be adjusted, or whether the photo hasn't been moved and you will be allowed to skip that photo as you quickly work through the photos that had been in this folder. Let me now describe the second way to correct broken links. You can preemptively tell Ancestral Quest to fix links before it finds them. To do this, go to the Tools menu and drop down to Move Scrapbook Items. This tool allows you to select any folder in which you have stored scrapbook items and tell Ancestral Quest to adjust the links to now point to a different folder. Just as described a minute ago, Ancestral Quest used to simply adjust all scrapbook links even if you hadn't moved all the photos from one folder to another. Now Ancestral Quest will examine each link and let you know whether the new link is correct or the old link is correct, so you can fix broken links without breaking links that are not broken. This adjustment to Ancestral Quest should help you maintain your scrapbook links when you reorganize your scrapbook folders. For those users who exchange their Ancestral Quest data with Family Search Family Tree, let me now tell you about a new capability that allows you to be more precise in syncing your data. I have already created a link between the record of Alma Findlay in my database and the corresponding record in Family Search Family Tree, which I will refer to as simply Family Tree. This link is shown as a blue tree icon here to the right of Alma's name. Let me click on this blue tree to see the Ancestral Quest record for Alma side by side with the corresponding Family Tree record. When you are replacing data in your file with data from Family Tree, you have a new option. Notice this checkbox by the death event. If I click on this box, Ancestral Quest will mark the data you see in Family Tree on the right to replace your Ancestral Quest data on the left. But what if some of your Ancestral Quest data is correct and different data from Family Tree is correct? What if the date in your file is correct but the place in Family Tree is correct? In this case, you only want to import the correct place from Family Tree and you want to keep the correct date in your file. Notice this smaller box to the right of the main checkbox, which contains a down arrow. This is the Advanced Options button. If you click this button, Ancestral Quest will let you be more precise in what you want to download from Family Tree. At the top of the box, you'll see the data in your file compared with the data in Family Tree. The action box will both tell you what the current action is and will allow you to change this action setting. So for now, there is no selection, which lets you know you haven't selected any action to take at this point. To import data from Family Tree, click the Import checkbox. Since you have data for the death event both in your file and in Family Tree, the default import action is to replace your data with the Family Tree data. So Ancestral Quest marks the default option for you. If you want, you could select a different import option, but in this case we want to replace some of the Ancestral Quest data, so let's leave the default and click on the Advanced Import Options button. Now you can choose which specific data items from Family Tree you want to have in your file. You can select the date, place, and if there were a description in this event, you would be able to also select description. I believe that the date in my file is accurate, so I will remove the check mark from the Family Search side. However, I believe that the place in Family Tree is accurate, so I will leave the check mark next to the place option. Notice that Ancestral Quest is providing me with 2 different versions of the place name. In Family Tree, the place includes the country name of United States. In my database, I prefer to have the place without the country name, so let me select the second option. Let me point out two things here. One, see the results section. This shows you the end result of your selections. If you complete the import at this time, you will end up with the date from my database and the place from family tree, but altered to not include the country. 2. Notice that the place option you selected is now in an edit field. If you notice a problem with a name from family tree, like perhaps a misspelling or an unusual abbreviation or some other problem, you can edit the place to correct it. Let's pretend for a second that the country name of Bear Lake is misspelled. I can change the spelling to correct it if I want. Notice down here in the results section that reflects the changes you make. However, the place actually was spelled correctly, so let's fix that. Okay, everything looks good here, so let me click the OK button to accept these advanced options. Notice that Ancestral Quest now shows you which portions of the data will remain and which portions will be replaced when you click the Save button at the end of the process. You will get similar options when you upload data from your file to Family Tree. If I click the regular options box on birth and then select an appropriate standardized place name, notice it shows that I will be replacing all of the data in Family Search with the data from my database. However, if instead I click the Advanced Options button and then click on the Advanced Upload Options button, I can make similar advanced choices as described earlier. So here I want to upload my date to Family Tree, but leave the place in Family Tree as it is. Before I disable this place field, let me point out that Ancestral Quest is smart enough to know that Family Tree prefers having the country and the place name. Even though the place in my database is missing the country name, Ancestral Quest provides me with the option to add the country name when I upload the data to Family Tree. This makes it easy for me to keep my places the way I like without the country, and yet send data to Family Tree the way they prefer. But since Family Tree already has an accurate place name, let me remove this check mark. Notice again the results section. I'm combining the date from my database with the place from Family Tree to show what will be in Family Tree at the end of the process. Now let me click OK to accept these options, and when I hit Save after selecting the proper standardized place, Ancestral Quest is showing what will be replaced in Family Tree when I click the Save button later. You will get similar options when you upload or import new data. Let me demonstrate by clicking on the Family Tree data for the 1860 Residents event. If I click the Main Options box, Ancestral Quest will take the default action of simply downloading this new event as it is from Family Tree. If instead I click the Advanced Options button, I will get more options. Since I want to import this data, let me click the checkbox to import. In this case, Ancestral Quest already has some residence events, so Ancestral Quest allows you the option of adding yet another residence event, or of selecting the option to replace one of the existing events in my database. In this situation, the default is to simply add another event, so that option is selected. If I click the Replace option, however, I will now be able to select from one of the existing residence events already in my file to replace. And then I could use the Advanced Import Options button to make further adjustments. But in this case, I actually want to import this as a new event. Let me click on the Advanced Import Options button. Because I am adding an event, Ancestral Quest assumes I want to import all the components, including the date, place, and description, from Family Search. The only real advanced choice I have when downloading a new event is whether to change the place. In this case, notice that Family Tree contains two different versions of the place. One as shown to users, and one as standardized that isn't directly shown. Both of these are shown as options to be imported. And since this is a place within the United States, if Family Tree does not provide an option both with and without the country name, Ancestral Quest supplements the options from Family Tree with options both with and without the country name from which you can pick. In summary, version 16 of Ancestral Quest has provided you with 3 new aids when syncing data with Family Tree. 1. When replacing existing data, you can choose which items to upload between date, place, and description. When uploading or importing place names, you can alter the place name as you perform the exchange. 3. When replacing data, Ancestral Quest shows you graphically what will be replaced to make it easier to see which choices you have made before you do the final save on this screen. We hope you will enjoy this ability to sync precisely the data items that you prefer with Family Tree. Now let me introduce the new advanced handling of family search sources. In this video, I will explain the situation that we attempt to improve with this new feature and a brief overview of how it solves the situation. For details, you'll need to watch the separate video on Ancestral Quest's advanced handling of family search sources. Let me illustrate the problem with an example of a simple source, the Utah marriages 1887 to 1935. This source is a collection of entries for thousands of marriages, but only a handful of these would be of individuals in my ancestry. After a brief scan, looking for entries in which a couple of my progenitors were mentioned in this source, I found 5 entries as shown in this table. Notice that Alma Findley was mentioned as the father of Alma Jr. in the first record, as the husband in the second record, and as the father of the bride, or the wife, in the next 2 records. Then another ancestor, Ralph, was mentioned as the father of the bride in the 5th record. Each of these 5 records mentions 6 people: the groom, the bride, the father and mother of the groom, and the father and mother of the bride. This expanded table shows how the top entry is expanded as it mentions each of the 6 people recorded in relation to this marriage. So by the time I am done documenting all the information from this source, I will have referenced this source 30 times, 6 people times 5 marriage records. The way the Ancestral Quest source system was designed, the first time you encounter this source, you would create the source for Utah marriages 1887 to 1935. Then create the first citation, Alma Findley Jr. and Inez Bunderson. And then you would attach it to the first of the 6 people which you encountered in your research. Then you would likely make sure that the other 5 people mentioned in this citation of the source are in your database, and you would then attach this citation to each of the remaining 5 people. Over time, as you continue your research, you would find the other 4 citations listed. For each, you would create a citation for the source and attach the citation to each of the 6 people mentioned in the citation. By the time you are done, you would have 1 source entry for this volume listed in your list of sources. You would have created 5 different citations, and you would have connected each citation to 6 individuals. Now let's contrast this with how sources are documented in Family Search and how they are downloaded into your Ancestral Quest database. Family Search creates a source for each person mentioned in a citation. As you do research with Family Search and create sources and connect those sources to individuals, here is a list of the sources created from the marriage record of Alma Jr. and Inez. Note that a separate source is created for each person mentioned in the citation. Each source is a combination of source detail and citation detail, as the source contains the source information, the citation information, and the person referenced in the citation. Once you have completed your research for the 5 marriage records in our example, you will have created 30 different sources in Family Search, and you will have downloaded these 30 sources into your Ancestral Quest database. Later, as you try to locate a source in your list of sources, you will likely have trouble finding any of these sources, as they are not alphabetized by the title of the actual source, but rather by the name of the person referenced in the citation of the source. Now, there is nothing wrong with recording sources in this manner, if that is how you prefer to do it. But many users of Ancestral Quest prefer to organize their sources as described earlier, rather than in the way that Family Search organizes them. In summary, Ancestral Quest was designed to record the information in this example as 1 source in the list of sources, with 5 citations and a total of 30 individual references. Family Search instead creates 30 sources. Prior versions of Ancestral Quest simply downloaded the 30 sources from Family Search, and you can still download Family Search sources as you have in the past. However, in version 16, you have an additional new advanced option. As you download sources from Family Search into your personal file, this new tool of Ancestral Quest will help you easily create a proper source the first time you encounter a particular source, such as Utah marriages 1887 to 1935, and then create the first citation and attach the first person. As you download additional references to this same source later, this tool will help you simply attach new citations to the already existing source in your file and attach new references to existing citations. Also, if you have already downloaded sources from Family Search and thus have dozens, hundreds, or thousands of such sources in your list of sources, this new tool will help you combine multiple references to a single citation and separate citations of a source. After using this tool to clean up the sources you have already downloaded from Family Search, you will have a list of sources and citations that fit into the source system initially designed in Ancestral Quest. Again, if you would like more details, there is a separate tutorial on how to use this tool, Advanced Handling of Family Search Sources in Ancestral Quest. Finally, let me review for LDS users an enhancement for LDS Ordinances in version 16. As you'll recall, historically, programs such as Ancestral Quest and PAF only recorded some of the LDS temple ordinances. These were the LDS baptism and endowment, along with the sealing ordinances. 2 other LDS ordinances were not recorded. It was pretty well assumed that if the person had been baptized, that the LDS confirmation was also performed, and if the person had received their endowment, then the initiatory must have also been performed. Over the last few years, as Family Search has re-engineered their family tree system, they now show the LDS confirmation and initiatory. For the last few versions, Ancestral Quest compensated for this by recording these 2 ordinances as other events. With version 16, we made some adjustments to the database structure to handle other improvements, but we also adjusted the way Ancestral Quest can handle these 2 LDS ordinances. However, these adjustments are controlled by a preference setting, so that if you prefer to record and display only the baptism, endowment, and sealings as in the past, you can still do that. Now here is the individual edit screen with all of the LDS ordinances activated. If we switch the preference, so let me close this screen, go to Tools, Preferences, and disable the Include Confirmation and Initiatory option. Let's go back and look at that same individual edit screen. Notice it's back the way it was in earlier versions. This preference indicates to Ancestral Quest whether you prefer to continue entering and displaying the older set of ordinances or whether you want to use the full set of ordinances. This preference setting also replaces another option in the program. If you go to the Family Search menu, then the Ordinance Reservation and Tracking System, and then to Update Ordinances. In prior versions, there was another option here that asked whether you wanted to ensure that your program recorded the confirmation and initiatory. That is now governed by the setting I just showed you in Preferences. This completes the tutorial on the major new features of Ancestral Quest 16. As I mentioned at the beginning, this tutorial only covers the major new enhancements that we felt needed special instructions. Ancestral Quest 16 contains other improvements and fixes that you may encounter as you use the program. Most notably, if you use the features in Ancestral Quest to sync with Family Search, by now you are aware that Family Search is constantly making changes to the way Ancestral Quest communicates with Family Search Family Tree. These changes require that Ancestral Quest also makes constant changes to maintain the ability to sync with Family Tree. As of the time this video is produced, the methods used by Ancestral Quest 15 and earlier to sync with Family Search no longer work. So you will need to use Ancestral Quest 16 if you want to continue to sync with Family Search Family Tree. Thank you for using Ancestral Quest to record and preserve your family tree. Please share this video with others who you know will benefit from using Ancestral Quest, including the new features presented in this tutorial.